In Alabama, a series of deadly assaults shocks the community and frustrates police. All the killers leave behind are the dead and fleeting images on surveillance videotape. Local police and federal agents follow the killer's trail up and down the eastern seaboard. The shadowy fugitives keep running, but the FBI will not give up the chase.
Surveillance video is often the most precise witness to a crime. Its images can speak for victims when they are unable. After 3 brutal murders were caught on tape in Alabama, the suspects fled the area. They had an arsenal of stolen weapons and swore they wouldn't be taken alive. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. Racing across several states, the fugitives tried to elude the FBI, and agents hoped to capture them without more bloodshed.
In the 1990s, Birmingham, Alabama saw a drop in both its population and its crime rate. But even in the safest cities, killers can strike. On May 18, 1996, a customer at a gas station discovered a body. Birmingham police responded to the 911 call. Crime scene investigators determined the victim, the station cashier, had been shot to death. He was the only employee on duty that day. The customer hadn't seen what happened to him. A trail of blood led back into the store and behind the counter. More blood there indicated the cashier lay briefly on the floor before going outside, perhaps hoping for help. He barely made it to the parking lot. Police first suspected a robbery shooting, but money was left on the counter, and the cash register had not been emptied. No fingerprints pointed toward a suspect, and no witnesses had seen anything. Investigators retrieved the store's security videotape and sent it to the police lab. The tape had degraded because it had been reused many times in the recorder. So the footage of the crime was blurry and few details could be seen. Police technicians tried to clean up the image electronically for detectives. The enhanced tape gave investigators a better look at the crime. It confirmed what the crime scene clues suggested. A lone customer shot the cashier, even though the employee was complying with his demands. It seemed he killed without reason. Technicians made video captures of individual frames and tried to enhance them in order to see the face of the perpetrator or any identifying characteristics. Birmingham police hoped to identify the suspect from the stills. Checking mugshots, they could not find a match. Detectives interviewed friends and relatives of the victim, trying to find some lead on the senseless murder. No one recognized the killer or knew who might want the cashier dead.
Still picture. Now they're a little fuzzy. Let me start out here.
Without any other evidence, the investigation stalled. 2 months later, and 20 miles south of Birmingham, a call came into the sheriff's office in Shelby County, Alabama. Sheriff James Jones received the report of 2 people downed at a pawn shop.
When we got the phone call, it really wasn't clear to us exactly what had happened. We had reason to believe that lives had been lost in the building. It happened so rarely in our county that I really was surprised when I got on the scene.
EMTs determined the pawn shop owner had died from multiple gunshots. A female employee was in critical condition with a gunshot wound to her head.
All other cars, when you're outside, make sure they...
The sheriff ordered deputies to stop any suspicious vehicles in the area.
We really didn't know what we were looking for at this point. But we was in hopes that our people would be sharp enough if they saw something that was out of place that they would be able to recognize that, stop that vehicle, and perhaps give us some leads from it.
Stabilizing her as much as they could in the field, the paramedics prepared the woman for the helicopter ride to the hospital. Authorities determined more than $2,300 in cash and jewelry was missing. And the gun cases had been nearly emptied. Since the pawn shop had frequent customers, it wasn't difficult for crime scene technicians to lift hundreds of latent fingerprints. Connecting one of them to the crime might be impossible. The lead investigator was Shelby County Sergeant Michael DeHart.
There was really a lot of evidence processing to be done, fingerprint dusting, so on, but we didn't find anything definitive as a result of that. The one thing that we did find that we did have were shell casings that were left at the scene.
The murder weapon was a .380 automatic handgun.
At the time, we didn't know if this was a one-time event that had occurred or if this was a part of a larger series of events.
The in-store shooting was similar to the earlier gas station murder, but this crime occurred during a robbery. Detectives checked for the shop's security video. Then they remembered something.
I was talking to the owner a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about putting a dummy machine in. He was talking about putting a real one over in this area.
Sergeant Russell Yawn found the other machine in the actual surveillance videotape.
The second, or the real VCR, continued to operate even after they took and unplugged and removed the tape from the dummy VCR. And it continued to record even until the time that I pushed the eject button.
And it's showing...
The videotape showed 2 young men entering the store at 3:23 p.m.
Yes, it does.
They cornered the shop owner, forcing him behind the counter with the female employee.
Look, there's a red truck.
Deputies spotted a red pickup truck barely visible outside the shop.
There's a red pickup right there.
It might be the getaway vehicle. The suspects looted the pawn shop for 13 minutes while the employees watched.
Good. We need to get this
They then
information
shot
out.
the hostages, point blank.
I'm going to collect this.
We saw nothing that told us that these 2 victims resisted or attempted to resist. They were very compliant. And I'm sure they did that with the hopes that they would live. But instead, their life was taken by execution style. And that was very disturbing to see that.
What I don't understand is, this is just garbage.
Sergeant Yawn and his partner, Sergeant Donald King, found more evidence near the spot where the victims had been killed.
As we were doing our search at the pawn shop, we saw a small pile of garbage in behind the counter, and we noted it at the time. Why was the garbage there? There was no garbage can. It really didn't make a whole lot of sense at the time. There was also some metal filings on the floor mixed in with the trash.
The filings likely came from a key-making machine installed on the counter. Detectives collected them for later examination. They believe the killers took the garbage can, but they didn't know why.
What they used to carry
Federal law requires that anyone buying or selling firearms must keep records of the transactions.
All the guns that were in here that were for sale.
Detectives asked another employee to bring up the store's weapons manifest, comparing it to the guns still in the shop.
Yeah, I think that's,
They realized the suspects took an entire arsenal.
yeah, I think that's it.
There were 32 stolen weapons in the hands of vicious killers.
We was very disturbed about what else would they do, what were they doing now, and what would they do again in the future.
Because of the potential for more violence by the heavily armed killers, sheriff's detectives immediately contacted the Shelby County District Attorney's Office.
Want to get that videotape out to the
Prosecutor Randy Hillman joined the investigation.
We like to be in on the front end of any investigation. It makes things a lot easier for us. It makes things a lot easier for the police officers working the scene as well.
Go to that cabin there.
The surveillance videotape was the best evidence investigators had to find the killers. It showed the suspects carry out many of the stolen items in a guitar case. One of them shot both the shop owner and the employee. At one point, his gun jammed. Almost mechanically, he cleared and reloaded, and then kept firing. The two suspects got into the waiting red pickup, both on the passenger side. There must have been a driver, a third suspect. Technicians made photos from video captures, but the quality was poor.
We had photographs of these individuals actually doing the execution. We had a partial photograph of the vehicle that they were in, but we didn't know who they were. And the level of violence here was critical to us. I mean, we had to stop these guys before it happened again.
Less than 8 hours after the shooting, investigators learned the pawn shop employee died in the hospital. Now there were 2 innocent murder victims. Technicians at the Alabama Department of Forensic Sciences examined the bullet fragments and casings found at the pawn shop. They compared them to those used in other area shootings, including the one at the Birmingham gas station, to see if the same gun was used. But the pawn shop bullets did not match any others. Still, investigators thought the 2 crimes might be related. They turned to the public for help.
We were able to distribute still photographs to the local media in the area, and we enlisted their assistance in getting the pictures out there to the public and to request assistance in identifying the perpetrators of these crimes.
They kept several aspects of the crime secret to help identify more reliable
What's the address
leads.
on Commerce Street? Okay.
The media exposure generated dozens of calls.
Okay. How many guys were there?
One caller said that while driving in Birmingham, he saw 2 men fitting the description of the pawn shop killers. They were carrying guns and a guitar case from a red pickup into a house.
Okay.
The detail of the guitar case had been withheld from the public.
Okay, great.
The caller said he knew the men, but only by their street names,
Okay.
Turkey and Maine.
Hey, Mike, we just got some...
Shelby County detectives took the information to Birmingham police.
Had an informant calling with 2 guys loading up...
The Metro Department had a database on street names.
Teens about 6.
Turkey was an alias for 16-year-old Marcus Presley. He resembled the shooter in the pawn shop murders. Maine was 18-year-old LaSamuel Gamble. He resembled the second pawn shop robber. The 2 had long juvenile records.
Go into the areas where the
information indicates...
Through court documents, they learned where Gamble lived.
We knew that the people that we were looking for were very dangerous men. They had killed before. We were afraid that they would kill again. And so when we undertook these searches, we wanted to use every safety precaution available to us. So we used tactical, dynamic entries into the residences that we searched.
Sheriff's have a search warrant!
The arrest team cleared the house where Gamble had been living. No one was home.
Nobody in the house?
Nobody?
A pair of cold-blooded killers with an arsenal of stolen weapons remained on the loose.
Everybody's inside. We'll set up a perimeter.
Okay. Thank you. Not seen any movement?
On July 28, 1996, Alabama investigators searched for Marcus Presley, LaSamuel Gamble, and a third suspect believed to be involved in a double murder at a pawn shop. The tactical arrest team entered the house where suspect Gamble lived, but they found no one there. Armed with a warrant, detectives searched the house. Shelby County Sergeant Russell Yawn recovered evidence that directly linked the suspect to the pawn shop murders.
During the search, we found the videotape that came from the dummy VCR. It was destroyed, the case was cracked and broken, the tape pulled from the housing, and it indicated to us that they were aware that they were being recorded, and they had the presence of mind to stop and try to remove or eliminate all evidence of their crime.
They also found an empty guitar case. It appeared to be the one taken from the pawn shop. Sergeant Donald King found more evidence in the kitchen.
We were able to find a garbage can, and in the bottom of it had some labels, some price tags and so forth from some of the guns and some of the jewelry from the pawn shop. And it also contained some of the same metal shavings that we were able to tie back to the robbery scene.
Sergeant Michael DeHart was frustrated that they didn't find any of the 32 stolen weapons.
At the time that we did the search, we knew that 3 people were involved, but the third person we didn't know. When we did the search at the residence, we found a paycheck stub in a coat pocket that had the name Stephen McKenzie on it from a business in the Boston area. So paycheck stub.
Perhaps McKenzie was the third suspect who drove the getaway vehicle.
Dated fairly recently.
He had no local address, but neighbors said he was a friend of Gamble and Presley. Court records listed Marcus Presley as living with his grandmother.
There's nothing here that can directly be tied to the pawn shop.
Investigators searched that house too, but found nothing there that related to the crime.
That's 10-4, it's 1230 3rd Avenue West.
Presley's grandmother arrived home as they were executing the search warrant.
Yes, ma'am. We got a search warrant to search this residence.
Can I go in my house?
Not right now. We're doing an investigation of a robbery, but you can speak to these 2 people right here.
Ma'am, I'm Chris Curry with Shelby County Sheriff's Office. Do you
Detective showed her video captures from the robbery.
Tell me if you recognize anyone. 2 people.
She admitted one of the men looked like her grandson.
Picture, if you would, and help us and tell me if you recognize anyone.
She had tried her best to raise Marcus, but he got involved with drugs and gangs and had been in trouble ever since.
Thank you very much. You've been very helpful. But again, I apologize for the inconvenience.
She said he would disappear for weeks at a time.
But it will take him a few more minutes to finish.
She was devastated to learn that now he was a murder suspect.
You are certainly welcome to sit on the porch if you like.
The suspect's apparently constant movement troubled prosecutor Randy Hillman.
They were young, they were mobile, they didn't have any home base that they operated out of like normal people have a home that they go to and from. They had several different residences that they would frequent.
Detectives canvassed the neighborhood where Gamble and Presley hung out, interviewing anyone who might know the suspects. Several people in the neighborhood said that lately, Gamble and Presley had been flashing jewelry and giving away guns to members of their street gang. Some said they heard the suspects were still in the area and offered addresses where the young men might be staying. The detectives checked all the addresses. Gamble and Presley seemed to have disappeared.
We had one last place that we wanted to look before going home that particular day. We were on the way back, and the suggestion was made, let's ride by the uncle of LaSamuel Gamble. Let's ride by his house and just see if anyone's there. We did that, and when we did, we saw a red pickup truck that matches the description of the vehicle that was used in the robbery.
It had no plates, but they could see the vehicle identification number. The detectives noticed a Massachusetts parking permit in the corner of the windshield.
6802746.
They hoped Gamble's uncle would have information about the suspects.
Good afternoon, sir. I want to talk to you about that red truck on the side of your house.
The uncle agreed to answer their questions, but not at his home. He did not want to be seen with the cops. They took a drive so they could talk. The uncle told investigators that the truck belonged to Stephen McKenzie, a friend of his nephew. It was the same name as the one on the Boston pay stub. The uncle admitted that his nephew recently stayed at his house with McKenzie and Presley. The trio had cleared out several days ago. Sergeant Yawn believed the uncle knew details.
And at first he really didn't want to give us any useful information, but we continued, and he did admit that they had left town and they had gone to Boston.
A check of the red pickup's Massachusetts parking permit confirmed that the truck belonged to Stephen McKenzie, the suspected getaway driver.
Everything going okay?
Eventually, the uncle gave investigators permission to search his property. He suggested they look under the porch. There, police found a paint gun. The serial number on the gun matched one taken from the pawn shop. There was enough probable cause to impound McKenzie's pickup and process it for evidence. But the technicians did not find anything that tied it to the pawn shop robbery homicide. With the possibility that the suspects had left the state, Shelby County authorities contacted FBI Special Agent Jeff Newton.
They requested FBI assistance in locating suspects that they had identified as they believed to be responsible for this terrible crime. At that point, I got information from the case from the Sheriff's Department representative, realized that we had enough probable cause at that point to apply for a federal unlawful flight to avoid prosecution, or UFAP warrant.
The FBI re-interviewed the suspect's friends. They told agents Gamble and Presley were acting desperate and volatile, and that the pair had promised if the law ever caught up with them, they would not be taken alive. In Alabama, authorities struggled to find the men believed responsible for 2 robbery homicides. The state increased the reward for the capture of LeSamuel Gamble, Marcus Presley, and Stephen McKenzie to $100,000. FBI Special Agent Jeff Newton believed the suspects left Alabama for Boston.
Anybody who's a suspect in a double homicide is automatically rated at the highest priority. I immediately notified our Boston office, you got bad guys heading your way, we believe, or may already be there. I gave them lots of details, everything I learned from Shelby County pertaining to their level of violence, you know, what they look like. We were sending photographs, we were sending full physical descriptions.
At the Boston, Massachusetts FBI field office, Special Agent Joseph Altman received the priority call.
The 3 individuals were identified to us as vicious killers, that they had made claims to the effect that they would not hesitate to kill again, that they would not be taken alive, or that they would take the life of any law enforcement officer that attempted to stop them.
Birmingham agents also sent Boston a list of places they should investigate. One was the construction company where suspect Stephen McKenzie had worked. Agents went to speak with the owner. The man said he had not seen the suspect in weeks. If McKenzie was in the Boston area, he had not made an attempt to come back to work. The owner had an employment record, but it did not contain any new address or other information that would help find the suspect.
Great.
Boston authorities staked out the other addresses that Birmingham had sent, including one of another uncle of LeSamuel Gamble. But they did not approach this house immediately.
We did not want to let on that we were surveilling this particular home. We wanted to allow at least 1 or 2 areas, homes in the area that they could return to.
After several hours, they spotted a man leaving the residence.
Looks like him, yeah. They want the radio back in and tell him that someone's coming out of the house.
It was not one of the suspects. They waited until they were sure he was alone and not being watched.
How you doing, sir? I'm Special Agent Daniel and Special Agent Frenzel would like to ask you a couple questions if we could. All right. Do you live in that building?
He was hesitant to talk, but did say that neither Gamble's uncle nor the suspects were in the house.
No one's in there? Yeah, Mark is present.
But he had seen them.
Thank you very much. Again, we just have to ask you.
He told us that both Gamble and Presley had been staying at this location, but they had since moved out. He did not know where they moved to. We felt that this location was no longer vital in our investigation, so we obtained a search warrant and searched the home and did not discover anything of lead value.
Another address on their list was in Roxbury, a suburb south of Boston. An agent set up surveillance there. It meant more long hours with no promise of a payoff. On August 1st, 1996, the Boston FBI held a press conference.
We believe these individuals to be extremely dangerous, most likely armed. They're wanted in Alabama. We'd like to bring these individuals in.
They distributed wanted posters and asked anyone with information to call a special tip line.
Hey,
Hey, what's up?
The media campaign produced dozens of leads. One was an address outside Boston where alleged getaway driver Stephen McKenzie was said to be staying. There was no word whether Gamble and Presley were with him.
All right, let's go.
The tactical arrest team had to be prepared for a fight. They caught McKenzie off guard. But Gamble and Presley were nowhere to be found. The two fugitives remained free and on the streets with an arsenal of stolen weapons. In August of 1996, the Boston SWAT team arrested one of 3 suspects who had fled Alabama after 2 robbery homicides. The suspected getaway driver, Stephen McKenzie, was unarmed and taken in for questioning.
Good work, guys.
Investigators searched the house where he was staying. They found jewelry, later determined to be from the Alabama pawnshop that was robbed. They also recovered 3 weapons. Running the serial numbers of the guns, agents learned they were among the 32 weapons stolen from the pawnshop.
P38, yeah, right.
But nothing in the house indicated where LaSamuel Gamble and Marcus Presley were. Boston agents held McKenzie on a charge of receiving stolen property. They contacted prosecutor Randy Hillman in Shelby County, Alabama.
Immediately after receiving that telephone call, we got on a plane and flew to Boston to help the Boston investigators.
They hoped McKenzie could lead them to the elusive armed killers.
We knew the level of violence and the numbers of guns that they had and what a danger they posed to other people.
The Shelby County authorities interviewed McKenzie.
Mr. McKenzie, you know why we're here. Our major concern is that these weapons are going to get back out on the street, and someone else, innocent persons, are going to lose their lives.
They confronted him with the evidence they had. Hoping for sentencing leniency, the suspect began to talk.
We're sitting around or whatever and drinking, and we just decided, hey, let's do it.
He said that he, Presley, and Gamble planned the pawnshop robbery in mid-July. They drove by the shop to check it out.
Drive the car, you know, watch out, stay
Gamble said it would be a good place to rob. There were guns, jewelry, and cash inside, and no security.
I'm positive. It was guaranteed that, you know, no one would get hurt. It was just a in and out thing.
On July 25th, they returned in McKenzie's pickup. Gamble and Presley went inside while McKenzie waited. They were only supposed to grab the money and valuables. But then McKenzie heard shots. They took what they came for, then fled.
I have a hard time believing that you don't know where they are. I know we're right there close. We're real close to them. I still think that they're real close around here.
McKenzie said Gamble and Presley had run with him to Boston.
I mean, I don't know.
and that they might still be in the area somewhere.
I'm positive about it.
Investigators were unconvinced.
He's not telling us everything. He's holding back on us.
That's right. We'll let him sit in it for a
But we're
while.
not
He
close to
claimed
those
that he
guys.
did not know where they were at the time, which I don't know that he did. He did give us some information about where they had been staying, the different houses that they may have gone to, and some other information. I think Mackenzie held out on us. I think Mackenzie knew more than what he was telling us.
At trial, Mackenzie's testimony would be attacked. The prosecutor turned to the one unimpeachable witness, the surveillance video. He sent the tape to the FBI's audio and video processing lab in Quantico, Virginia. The task of cleaning up the footage fell to video program manager Dale Linden.
This tape was a VHS recording on a security system. It had, I would say, fairly poor quality as far as resolution. It had a backlighting issue where the camera was facing towards the windows. At some points, some of the people in this video scene looks like silhouette. As people moved around, the closer they got to the camera, the better images we were able to retrieve.
Focusing on the portions of video where the perpetrators were nearest the camera, Linden began enhancing the images.
Once we digitize these images, we will go through each one. And depending on what the problems are, we will apply different types of filter processes. In this particular case, the first thing we did was we did some contrast adjustments to make the images look brighter and focusing in primarily on the subjects. In this particular case, I felt that we did some improvement to get facial detail of the face and the weapons, and also their movements within the store itself.
The results strengthened the case against Gamble and Presley. Now authorities needed to catch them. The FBI continued their stakeout at a house in Roxbury, Massachusetts, where informants said the men might hide out. It was the best lead so far for FBI Special Agent Joseph Altman.
We surveilled this house for approximately 48 hours. The street information that we had was getting better and better all the time, that the individuals were holed up in this house. We thought that we saw movement in the house.
Are they ready? This is Special Agent Frasker. SWAT ready?
Field agents told the SWAT team to prepare for entry. Right before the go word was given, a man left the target house.
Excuse me, sir. How you doing?
Agents believed it was Gamble's uncle. They knew he was on probation for a felony offense. In accepting probation, a person gives up his Fourth Amendment rights. He can be stopped and searched at any time.
Oh, that's what we want to find out. Once you put them in this procedure, this all right. I don't care about your cousin. Gun!
Agents found a handgun.
This was one of the weapons that was actually stolen during the robbery in Alabama, one of the 32 weapons that were stolen. He told us that the subjects were no longer in this house. However, we felt that since he was related to the subjects and that he had a stolen weapon on him, that we could not take this information at face value. So Boston SWAT went ahead and made the entry.
Gamble and Presley had sworn never to be taken alive. So the SWAT team prepared for a shootout.
We felt that the only way that they were going to be extricated from the house was through force.
The tactical arrest team swept through the house, clearing each room as they went. No one was inside.
However, they did find some travel bags belonging to Presley and Gamble. Inside these bags were a couple of weapons, in addition to a photograph.
The photos showed the fugitives getting on a bus. The travel bags contained the shirts worn by Gamble and Presley at the pawn shop. Investigators also recovered one of the guns used in the pawn shop robbery.
Thank you, officer. Thank you very much. Come on. Come on.
The uncle confirmed Gamble and Presley stayed at the house.
We found these pictures in there. Yeah, those are the guys. Who's that? Those are both of them?
He said they left on a bus for Virginia, where Gamble's girlfriend lived.
Yeah, they had guns. They had guns too? Okay.
The FBI and Boston police had missed the dangerous fugitives by a matter of hours. On August 5th, 1996, fugitives LeSamuel Gamble and Marcus Presley eluded an arrest team in Boston. An uncle told agents the men had left for Virginia, where one had a girlfriend, but he did not know exactly where. To narrow the search, the FBI obtained the phone records of houses in Boston where the suspects might have stayed. For nearly 48 hours, agents combed through the records, looking for common numbers. According to FBI Special Agent Joseph Altman, they found one.
We did find a common phone numbers that occurred about 2.5 months before the murders took place and about a week after the murders took place.
The number was in the Norfolk, Virginia area. Boston agents contacted the FBI's Norfolk field office. On August 8th, Special Agent John Harley received word from Boston to apprehend the young fugitives.
Youth can be a factor in making somebody a little bit more unpredictable. If they're older and more set in their ways, they may even have a past pattern of conduct that we can look at and help us in apprehending that person. But with these two individuals, as young as they were, they proved to be very difficult because they were not predictable at all.
At 5:30 the next morning, the fugitive task force arrived.
You alone in there?
An individual came to the door who we weren't sure matched description or not initially, but we went ahead and detained him there at the door and asked if we could go ahead and consent to search his apartment, at which time he said we could.
Seen these guys? You haven't seen them before?
The resident recognized photographs of the suspects.
The individual who we talked to provided us information that he had had a party recently at his apartment and that two individuals matching the description of Presley and Gamble had come with a girl that he knew.
The place was empty, but the resident gave agents the girl's address.
Time is starting to tick by, and we then have to head over to try to locate this apartment where this girlfriend is apparently living, who's associated with the two subjects.
An arrest team quickly assembled outside the target apartment, a third-story residence. Norfolk police helped cordon off the area while agents assessed the building for entry.
It's now getting to be about 9 o'clock in the morning. The sun's up now, and we were getting concerned that if the two subjects were sleeping, that they weren't going to be sleeping for very much longer, and we would prefer to go in if they were obviously not awake.
The arrest team split into two groups and moved in.
We decided to make our main effort use the most people to go up the fire escape, which isn't the most conducive route, but it was the route that we thought offered the most surprise. We also then stationed two special state police agents on the front door, which would have been in the interior hallway, just to make sure that any bad guys didn't run out.
Agents did not have the time to obtain a search warrant for the apartment. To get inside and make a legal arrest, they would have to see the suspects or get permission. They spotted a resident through a back window and took a risk.
We announced to him who we were and that we were looking for a couple of individuals and asked if he minded if we took a look around. This older gentleman then stepped aside, nodded, "Come on in," and that's when we made our entry.
They found Presley first.
We immediately handcuffed him and detained him.
He had no opportunity to warn his friend. In a rear bedroom, the team found Gamble. The agents positively identified Presley and Gamble from photographs and placed them under arrest. U.S. Marshals transported the fugitives back to Shelby County, Alabama. When questioned at the county jail, Samuel Gamble blamed Presley for the murders. When they spoke to Marcus Presley, he had a different story. Each believed they had destroyed the surveillance tape.
Presley and Gamble both still thought that there was nobody alive from the robbery who could say exactly what happened. They continued to point the finger at each other, saying, "He's the one that did it," or "It wasn't me, it was someone else," until they saw the videotape. Once they saw the videotape, they realized that no longer could they lie about it, that we had them actually doing the executions. And the whole tenor of the conversation changed then. Eventually, Marcus Presley, after pointing the finger several other places, Presley confessed and said that he did do the killing.
How about this?
Presley also confessed to another crime. He had been the shooter in the gas station murder in Birmingham. He said he thought the cashier was going for a gun, so he shot him. In 1997, the three suspects had separate trials. For his role, Stephen McKenzie received 50 years. An Alabama jury convicted Samuel Gamble of capital murder and sentenced him to death for being part of the pawnshop slayings. Marcus Presley received the death penalty for killing the gas station cashier. Another jury sentenced him to death a second time for killing the pawnshop employees.
When the jurors saw this tape, they were shocked. People are used to seeing violence on television, and we've seen so much of it that you kind of become detached, that it becomes old hat to you. This was an actual videotape of two people being executed, and it had a profound impact on the jury. Actually, the owner of the pawn shop was an unwitting participant in the investigation of his own murder. By having the dummy VCR and putting that tape in our hands, showing the actual executions, he helped us solve this case a lot more quickly and with conviction, with absolute certainty. Whereas if we hadn't had this tape, it would have been a guessing game.
Keep driving, take it easy.
In 1996, a pair of convicted felons escaped across the country. When a foreign military officer disappeared along their trail, authorities wondered if the armed fugitives had become killers. The FBI raced to find the escapees before more victims crossed their path.
In Alabama, 2 desperate criminals fled the custody of a local deputy. Eluding authorities, they made their way across the country in a wave of car theft, abduction, and murder. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. Escaped criminals believe they have nothing to lose. They'll do anything to avoid capture. After the convicts claimed their first victim, further bloodshed was inevitable, unless the FBI could find them and bring them to justice.
Central Alabama, May 21st, 1996. A DeKalb County deputy was assigned to transport 3 inmates from state prisons to face court dates. Michael Thompson was to be sentenced for murder.
What it is, I always.
The deputy knew Thompson, having transported him before.
What they putting you back up there for this?
Thompson had persuaded the deputy to let him sit in the front seat. Thompson had just met another inmate, Roger Yaden. The career criminal had 17 burglary convictions and 3 prison escapes on his record. The third inmate was on work release. The prisoners were not handcuffed for the short drive. As the group neared Talladega, Alabama, Thompson made his move. At gunpoint, Thompson forced the deputy to keep driving.
Keep him quiet. Take it easy. Still, man.
He ordered him to drive to a secluded area in the woods near Lincoln, Alabama.
Open the door. Up.
Thompson and Yaden freed themselves. They marched their hostages into the woods.
Keep walking his feet cool with it, man. Close off. Go, strip, go.
The men forced the deputy and the other inmate to strip out of their clothes.
Just shut up. The shoes, too.
The deputy's extra handcuff key fell unnoticed to the ground.
Sit down. Sit down. Sit down.
Bound in the remote woods, the officer didn't know if he would be executed.
Right, hurry up. Cut the cliff. Let's go. It's all right, I'll be riding with you again. Thanks.
The 2 escapees simply ran off.
Have anything to do with us, man.
Michael Thompson and Roger Yaden took off in the direction of Talladega, leaving their prison clothes behind. It was Yaden's 4th escape from Alabama authorities. The deputy had to contact the sheriff's department. With a dropped handcuff key, he freed himself and the other inmate, then ran for help.
Keep going. Get out.
The escaped convicts had the deputy's service weapon and a shotgun stored in the patrol car. Under the cover of law officers, the 2 felons endangered anyone in their path. The deputy and the remaining inmate had flagged down a motorist and reached the local police department.
Problem is, push my head against the window.
Police immediately issued an urgent be-on-the-lookout alert for the 2 escapees in the stolen patrol car.
One individual, Thompson, 6 foot.
DeKalb County law enforcement launched a search. But the area contained hundreds of miles of rural roads. Despite the search, no sightings of the fugitives or the deputy's car came in that day.
Okay, let's start with
the description of the man who had the
It wasn't until the evening that authorities received their first clue to Thompson's and Yaden's actions. A local paramedic contacted Talladega City Police and told them about his ordeal. He said that earlier that day, he was driving near Talladega when he noticed a sheriff's patrol car following him. When he heard the siren, the off-duty paramedic pulled over. He believed it was a routine stop. The officer asked for his license and wallet. Paramedic Bob Gortney didn't think he'd been speeding.
So the reason we pulled you over is your vehicle fits the description of a vehicle that was involved in a hit and run. And I told him, well, I haven't been in any accident. You know, you can check my truck, you can look around, there's not a scratch on it. And he said, well, your truck fits the description that we've gotten, so we're going to, you know, check it out.
Gortney didn't suspect anything.
No flags went off when he first walked up to me because he was in full uniform, had the badge and the name tag, and I really didn't make contact with the whole uniform. I seen the gun when he had his hand on it.
Gortney gave the deputy his paramedic badge number, asking him to call in to verify his identity. But the deputy refused. Following the deputy's orders, the paramedic got into the patrol car. He believed it was simply a misunderstanding and that he would be released shortly.
He said, well, we're going to carry you back over here to the accident scene. And I said, well, that's fine, you know, my truck doesn't fit the description, and we'll just get this cleared up.
He first realized something was wrong when a man in civilian clothes carrying a shotgun ran from the patrol car to his truck.
Okay, let's start with the man that approached.
From the description, police believe the man driving the pickup was Roger Yaden. They believe Michael Thompson was the one dressed as the deputy. Thompson followed the pickup with the paramedic locked in the back.
What the deal is, you can have the truck.
Gortney asked for an explanation.
Keep it quiet.
He said, we're just going to take your truck. And I knew right then it was a kidnapping. These guys just kidnapped me. So I went into the pleading mode, you know. I told him, I said, look, you know, I'm only 30 years old. I've got a wife and kids, and you have my truck, you have my gun. There's no sense in killing me.
Michael Thompson followed behind to an isolated spot off the highway. Roger Yaden had found the paramedic's 9mm handgun in the truck. Bob Gortney was helpless in the patrol car's locked back seat.
What up? Hi, man. Take the money.
The men forced him inside the cruiser's trunk. The kidnapped paramedic believed they were going to kill him.
I was laying there at the point, so if they shot through the trunk, I knew they would miss me. You know, if a bullet was to come through, maybe it would graze me and not hit any vital organs, so I was trying to protect myself from the point of being shot through the trunk. And I could hear vehicles pass by, and then I heard my truck crank, and then I heard it sped off, and it was hot. I felt like I was suffocating. I kept thinking to myself, you need to slow down, because if you don't, you're going to use up all your energy, and plus it's hot in here, I'm going to dehydrate, and I'm probably going to pass out. I was scared. I was shaking, and I was laying in the trunk, and I got to thinking, okay, you're a paramedic. You've extricated people 1,000 times. Now it's time for you to do what you've learned to get yourself out of this trunk, to extricate yourself so you can still be alive.
Using a jack he found in the trunk, Gortney worked for 2 hours. Finally, he popped the trunk open. He ran to the nearest house where a woman called police.
And she'll just sit there for a minute, enjoy coffee, and try to warm up. I'll be right with you.
An updated bulletin was issued for the pair of fugitives in the black pickup truck they were now driving.
232 to all units. This is a broadcast for 0900 suspect.
They were armed with two 9mm handguns and a shotgun. Authorities sped to the main interstate, figuring the fugitives would use it to flee the area. With a stolen truck full of gas and interstate highways nearby, law officers knew that Michael Thompson and Roger Yaden had a big lead on them. They could be anywhere. 7 days later, and 1,200 miles away, an abandoned black pickup truck with no license plates turned up in Santa Rosa, New Mexico. The vehicle identification number on the dash had been destroyed. But police located a second identification number on the truck's chassis. A record search showed that it was the paramedics' truck stolen in Alabama. Because of the interstate travel, the FBI was notified. An immediate search of the area revealed no sign of Michael Thompson or Roger Yaden. The armed fugitives had dumped the one vehicle investigators could trace. On June 7, 1996, the FBI in Birmingham, Alabama, filed a warrant for unlawful flight to avoid confinement. Police agencies across the country were notified to watch for any sign of Yaden and Thompson. 2 weeks later, 1,200 miles east of where the paramedics' stolen truck was recovered in New Mexico, a group of diving students spotted a car at the bottom of Fowler Lake near Terre Haute, Indiana. Indiana Department of Natural Resources agent Dean Jenkins responded with his team.
The car was laying, it was in about 25, 30 foot of water. It was on its top. The windshield had been broke out from when it sank. It apparently was driven off the ramp.
Indiana Department of Natural Resources officers dove into the lake to investigate. They found a red car with no license plates. Divers could see items from the vehicle, including traveler's checks resting on the bottom. There was no body nearby.
The degree of personal items we found and what they were, traveler's checks, those kind of things that would ordinarily you would think would be stolen or discarded along the way prior to someone just dumping a stolen car. I think that was the key thing that made me wonder what else was involved with this vehicle.
Investigators removed the car to process it on shore. In the trunk, technicians recovered a British passport for Army Major David Nichols. Traveler's checks and airline ticket stubs issued to the Major were found in the glove compartment. Among the items was an Alabama jail booking slip with a local Indiana name and address written on the back. Checking the car's identification number, investigators discovered it was a rental from Colorado, reported missing along with the Major 16 days after he had rented it.
The VIN number is 726JJ6.
Because a foreign military officer was the likely victim of a crime, Supervisory Special Agent Jack Osborne from the FBI field office in Indianapolis was called in. He believed the name on the Alabama jail booking slip was the best lead in Major Nichols' disappearance.
From the booking slip that was found in the car, on the back side was several handwritten notes, not so much with phone numbers, but maybe somebody's first name and an address. One of those names and address led us to a relative of Mr. Yaden who resided in Terre Haute.
The relative was an aunt of Roger Yaden's. He was one of 2 escaped convicts whom investigators had searched for in New Mexico. She told an agent that she did not know why her name was on the back of the Alabama jail booking slip. She also had no knowledge of Major Nichols, his red rental car, or that her nephew had escaped custody.
She told us that she did have a nephew, Roger Dale Yaden, who she believed was in custody in Alabama and had communicated a lot with him in writing as her children had.
She did say that Yaden had some old friends in the area, but she couldn't recall their names. If Roger Yaden had made it to Indiana, the FBI believed murderer Michael Thompson was with him. They knew the pair of escaped convicts had already threatened to kill 3 others in Alabama and were last seen with 2 handguns and a shotgun. Agents feared that Roger Yaden and Michael Thompson may have used one of those weapons on the missing British major. In June of 1996, the FBI and Indiana police searched for armed fugitives Michael Thompson and Roger Yaden, who had escaped from Alabama authorities. They were considered prime suspects in the disappearance of British Army Major David Nichols, whose rental car was found at the bottom of an Indiana lake. According to FBI Supervisory Special Agent Jack Osborne, an Alabama jail booking slip found inside the car linked the fugitives to the missing major.
The evidence certainly associated that vehicle with our missing major, and that he was not in and around Terre Haute, nor was he located in the lake. It likewise then identified our 2 escaped prisoners that we believed were together and did have possession of the British Army officer's car, and that they still possibly could be in the Terre Haute area.
Agents went to the British Embassy in Washington, D.C. to find out more about the major's travel itinerary.
Sent to us prior to his arrival.
The FBI needed to determine where and when Major Nichols may have crossed paths with the armed fugitives.
The British government provided us some very basic information that indicated a British Army officer of theirs had been in the United States, arriving on the 20th of May, arrived at Denver, and was to travel to New Mexico to attend a language school, and then to Texas to attend a second school.
On travel orders issued by NATO, Major David Nichols was scheduled to arrive at the first seminar in Albuquerque on May 26th. Nichols was a vice commander of the British Defense School of Languages, an expert linguist fluent in 5 languages. He told his wife and 3 children that he planned to sightsee for a few days before the seminar. But school officials in Albuquerque never heard from the major after he failed to arrive.
The FBI felt it was strange that the British Army officer had not attended school. The British government likewise, through contact they had with the family and friends of the missing major, felt that it was strange that he had not been in contact with them, which then caused the British government great concern.
Agent Osborne contacted the FBI field office in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Special Agent John Shum needed to determine where the major was last seen in the 450 miles between Denver and Albuquerque.
They gave us his itinerary, photos, descriptions, potential contacts here in the U.S. that he might have contacted once we couldn't find him where he was supposed to be. So they gave us a complete, what we would call a victimology of him, his background, personality.
Agents also checked the British major's credit card purchases.
Hey, how you doing?
The last time he used his card was to buy gas in the small town of Raton on the Colorado-New Mexico border.
Can I take a look at it, please?
The gas station was just 150 miles from the place Michael Thompson and Roger Yaden, the escaped fugitives from Alabama, had abandoned the black pickup truck they had stolen. Agents wanted to confirm how far the British major had traveled past Raton.
Yes, please.
They checked at a hotel in Old Town Albuquerque where the major had made advance reservations. He never showed up, and his reservation was never canceled. The major had disappeared somewhere between the gas station near the Colorado border, where his credit card had been used, and the hotel in Albuquerque. The FBI suspected Michael Thompson and Roger Yaden had abducted him, but they had vanished too. Agent Shum called the major's wife in England to find out more about how her husband may have reacted if accosted by two desperate criminals.
She told me he was a very gentle man, he was a very good man, and that if he was confronted with by these people, that he would not have been confrontational, he would have been willing to do what they say, give them anything they want, just to avoid a confrontation. And she said that he would have been very concerned about his safety and being able to make it back to England to help raise his boys.
1,200 miles away in Indiana, close to the lake where the major's car was found, local police received a call from a junkyard manager who reported seeing two suspicious men on his property. When the officer arrived, the two men fled from a pickup truck loaded with scrap metal. It was unsafe for a lone officer to follow two men into the woods. He called in the truck's license plate numbers and learned the vehicle had been stolen. Crime scene technicians processed the truck. They found a tag from a video camera strap that belonged to Major David Nichols. They also recovered a letter that was addressed to fugitive Roger Yaden's mother in Alabama.
And it was generally saying that he was out of prison and was generally going to be staying in the Terre Haute area.
When agents contacted Yaden's mother in Alabama, she said she hadn't heard from her son and had no idea where he might be.
No, things are going fine.
Investigators were sure the fugitives were nearby.
We got both your photographs. The items that were recovered in that truck were extremely important because it not only associated Yaden and Thompson with that vehicle, it also associated the missing major with that vehicle.
It was more compelling evidence that Yaden and Thompson were likely responsible for the major's disappearance. But the armed fugitives were moving fast, and the FBI was still one step behind. In the summer of 1996, the FBI continued their hunt for escaped Alabama convicts Michael Thompson and Roger Yaden. Agents suspected they had carjacked a British man who was still missing, then dumped his rental car in a lake near Terre Haute, Indiana, where Roger Yaden had relatives. At a nearby high school, the FBI and Indiana investigators had established a satellite command post. They received a court order to examine Yaden's local juvenile record. They noticed that Yaden often got into trouble with one particular friend. Checking the friend's background, they learned that he managed a nearby auto salvage yard. Indianapolis FBI Special Agent William Hamilton would chase the lead.
My partner and I decided that we would drive a unmarked vehicle into this area in an undercover capacity under the ruse of looking for a specific auto part.
The 5-acre property was a good hiding place. It was filled with a maze of cars surrounded by dense woods. Agents staked out the location.
I just haven't seen anything in a while. It's just not moving.
They needed to confirm that Yaden's childhood friend was on duty. In order to assure their identities would not be discovered, They left their badges and weapons in their vehicle.
After going all the way to the far south end of the salvage yard, we noticed a trailer back in the woods, and there was 2 white males there working.
The men fit the general description of the armed fugitives, but the unarmed agents could not be sure.
Hello.
They hoped to learn more from the manager.
You get a lot of stuff in.
The undercover agents engaged him in small talk and confirmed that he was a friend of Roger Yaden's.
The childhood friend, he indicated that he'd known Yaden for several years. They had both came to his residence in early June, and they showed up there in a red Taurus.
That car matched the description of the missing Major's vehicle. By the time the agents finished their conversation, the 2 men they had glimpsed earlier were gone. The FBI believed those 2 men had been Thompson and Yaden. After assembling an arrest team, agents and local officers raced back to the salvage yard.
I think we're gonna. I don't think he's very.
On the way, they noticed a pickup speeding in the opposite direction.
That's him.
One agent spotted Roger Yaden inside, traveling with the salvage yard manager. They couldn't see if Michael Thompson was also with them. Investigators gave chase. They trailed the truck to a dead end. Yaden jumped out and headed for the woods. The fugitive's childhood friend was detained for questioning. He said Yaden had forced him to lead police on a chase until he could jump out of the truck. Assured he had not intentionally harbored the suspects, police later released the friend.
The childhood friend knew nothing of their recent criminal behavior. He had only knew that Yaden had been in jail once for burglary.
Roger Yaden had eluded pursuing investigators. A canine unit was called in to track him. The highly trained dog picked up a scent.
Mike. Mike. Mike.
On July 2nd, 1996, Roger Yaden decided he was finished running. But his accomplice, convicted murderer Michael Thompson, was still at large. Having Yaden in custody was only a partial victory, according to FBI Special Agent Jack Osborne.
After Yaden's arrest, this is not over at all. We know that we're now dealing with another fugitive, maybe the worst of the 2 fugitives. We do not know where he's at. If he's still on the property, if he's in the trailer, if he's in the woods, if he has a weapon or not.
Come out with your hands up.
Suspecting Michael Thompson took refuge in the auto salvage yard's trailer. Law enforcement teams surrounded it.
Thompson, this is Special Agent Hamilton with the FBI. You are surrounded. I repeat, with the FBI.
They ordered him to come out unarmed.
You are surrounded. This is a warning.
Agents warned anyone inside that the trailer would be tear gassed.
Your hands up. Again, I repeat, we are going to fire tear gas.
There was no response.
With your hands up.
The atmosphere was very tense. We did not know if Thompson was inside the trailer with maybe a long gun or even a handgun, positioned on some of our people. So we had to maintain cover all around the perimeter of the trailer.
Come out with your hands up. You will not be harmed.
Authorities gave the signal to use the gas. They stormed the trailer. No one knew if escaped murderer Michael Thompson was armed and barricaded inside.
Thompson, I repeat, Mr. Thompson, you need to come out.
On July 2nd, 1996, after capturing Alabama fugitive Roger Yaden in Indiana, FBI agents stormed a salvage yard trailer where they believed his partner was hiding. But Indiana Department of Natural Resources agent Dean Jenkins and his team did not find convicted killer Michael Thompson inside.
That was a terrible disappointment because we figured we were on to him. We caught one, we were looking to get the other one and pretty much make it a clean sweep, and he wasn't in there.
Agents questioned the salvage yard manager, a childhood friend of Yaden's who had unknowingly harbored the fugitives. He said he had no idea where Thompson might be hiding, but he did show agents where Yaden and Thompson kept their belongings. From the trunk of a car, agents retrieved a suitcase labeled with the name of missing British Major David Nichols. The Major's clothes and personal effects were still inside. Agents believed the fugitives had carjacked the Major in New Mexico. The search team secured a 3-mile perimeter around the salvage yard and told the man to call immediately if he spotted Thompson.
We used canines and broke up into teams of 3 and 4 officers with canines and searched the area, ran tracks all throughout the lot, the salvage yard area, and then the surrounding woods looking for him, and that took an awfully long time. That went from the time they inserted the gas in the afternoon well past darkness.
With a convicted killer on the loose, FBI and local law enforcement could not afford to wait. They patrolled roadways and fields, hoping to flush Thompson from hiding. Despite hours of searching, the fugitive had eluded them once again.
Yeah, the smoke all came in this way, so markings on the outside.
In the morning, agents considered the possibility that Thompson may have somehow slipped past the perimeter. They had no way of knowing if he was still in the immediate area. Then Special Agent William Hamilton got the call they were hoping for.
All right, good. Listen, don't go near him. We're going to be there.
On July the 3rd, the morning following the arrest of Roger Yaden, the childhood friend of Yaden telephoned me and advised me that the subject, Thompson, was asleep in the junkyard in the back of one of the cars near his residence, the trailer.
The team was concerned that Thompson would be armed. There was no telling what the desperate fugitive would do when cornered. Exhausted from running, the killer gave up without a fight.
Hands up, hands up.
After 43 days, 6,000 miles, and thousands of man-hours, the last fugitive wanted in Major Nichols' disappearance was in custody. Thompson refused to talk to investigators. But Roger Yaden, apprehended the day before, felt differently. Hoping for leniency from federal authorities, Yaden agreed to tell investigators what they wanted to know.
We also need a new car. We need to ditch the pickup.
FBI Special Agent Jack Osborne led the questioning.
We had about 200 bucks. Yes, correct. We only have one.
He indicated a willingness to give us a statement, to provide all of the information that he and Thompson were involved in, to include the initial escape, to include the carjacking in Alabama. And this is the first time that we learned that the British Army officer had been killed.
In the black pickup the pair had carjacked from Alabama, the fugitives made their way to New Mexico, selling tools from the truck for money. When their cash ran out, they decided to rob and carjack another victim. They staked out a remote rest area 100 miles south of Raton, New Mexico, the last known town where British Major Nichols had traveled. The convicts figured that tourists would be traveling with a lot of money and waited for someone who was traveling alone. That's when the British Major pulled up. As they had done in Alabama, they forced their victim into the trunk of the car. Thompson drove the Major's rental car, while Yaden followed in the truck. From Yaden's account, the British Major reacted to the crime as the Major's wife had predicted he would, according to Special Agent John Shum.
Everything she said about him is exactly what Yaden told us happened, that Major Nichols was non-confrontational. He did what he could to keep the situation from escalating. He talked about his 3 boys in England, about how he needed to get back there for them, and he asked that he not be hurt because he was concerned about what would happen to his children.
Nothing to do with it. I was in the pickup truck. I was in the back.
Yaden said Thompson had planned the whole thing and that he was calling the shots. They drove 50 miles until it was dark, then pulled into a deserted area off the highway. At gunpoint, Thompson forced Major Nichols out of the trunk. Without warning, he shot him in the back of the head. Thompson turned the Major over and shot again. They hid his body at the site, then abandoned the pickup truck several miles away. Yaden said Thompson never explained why he had killed this carjacking victim.
You didn't have to kill him.
The pair of fugitives drove Major Nichols' car to Indiana, where they dumped it in Fowler Lake.
Tell us about the gun.
Roger Yaden had confessed his crimes to the FBI, but he wanted a deal before he gave up the location of Major Nichols' body.
He wanted to hold back until he could get some assurance from the government that we would not seek the death penalty against him. If that occurred, then he was willing to help us find the body of the missing Major if we had not located the body already.
All right, so let's talk about this deal. What are you looking for here?
Agents met with Yaden and his lawyer. The prisoner said he would tell them where the body was if they also promised he would not serve time in an Alabama state prison.
You want the federal. What's going on?
We need to know.
Initial searches without his help turned up nothing. FBI Special Agent John Shum was worried the Major's body would not be found without Yaden's help.
I don't follow this. What is the deal?
The most important thing for us to do was find Major Nichols' body. That was going to be important to be successful in any prosecution, and it was important for us because it was the right thing to do. Since we couldn't make him safe in this country, since we couldn't guarantee his safety, at least we could return his body to his family.
So, what are we going to get out of this? You think you're asking for a federal facility?
Federal prosecutors agreed to the deal.
It's all written out.
What are you looking
Yaden led investigators to a secluded spot in the New Mexico wilderness. The prisoner was an accomplished escape artist, having fled custody more than once.
Well, we were very concerned about that because he had escaped 4 times before in Alabama. He was obviously very good at that. Plus, we had to be concerned about our own safety. So not only did we focus on the mission of finding Major Nichols' body, but we had to be very, very concerned about making sure Roger Yaden was not trying to deceive us and just using this as a ruse to set up an escape attempt.
FBI field agents were wary as a SWAT team secured the location. They had no way of knowing if Yaden might have friends in the area waiting to strike at agents. On September 24th, 1996, recaptured prisoner Roger Yaden led the FBI into the New Mexico desert, where he claimed the body of Major David Nichols remained hidden after being murdered. Yaden would be spared the death penalty if he could locate the remains. FBI Special Agent John Shum recalls that the likelihood of finding the body without Yaden's help was slim.
It was a very desolate area. It was off of a very little used 2-lane highway in New Mexico in a very remote area. And then off this 2-lane highway, we had to go down a gravel road for approximately a mile. And then off the gravel road, we had to drive into a cattle pasture for several hundred yards. So it was incredibly remote.
Agents were concerned that Yaden had taken them there as a ruse to effect another escape. Finally, Yaden pointed out a spot to the agents.
There it is.
Even Yaden himself seemed very somber and respectful of the situation we were in, that we had finally located this man's body and we're going to be able to give him a proper resting place now.
Didn't you say something about
exposure to the elements made identification impossible. Examiners took dental x-rays, which were later matched to records sent from England.
Right.
Major Nichols' family in Britain was notified. The officer's murderer, Michael Thompson, avoided a possible death sentence by pleading guilty in federal court to carjacking and murdering a foreign official. He was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole. For kidnapping, robbery, and escape in Alabama, Thompson received 5 additional life sentences. In exchange for his cooperation, Roger Yaden was allowed to plead guilty to only 1 count of carjacking and was sentenced to 18 years. Yaden was afraid of Alabama state prisons. As part of his deal, he was to serve his sentence in a federal facility.
Yaden, time to get up.
He was temporarily held at a county jail in Las Vegas, New Mexico, until he could be transferred.
Yaden, let's go. Yaden, get up. Come on, get up.
Remarkably, Roger Yaden had escaped again. 2 other inmates also made the breakout with Yaden. The search party with a dog team tracked Yaden's scent from jail. But the trail ended at an interstate highway. Later that day, authorities captured one of 2 other inmates who escaped with Yaden.
Go ahead.
The inmate had injured his leg in the attempt and was unable to get far on foot. He explained to authorities how they got out. He said that Yaden had designed the plan. In the jail's black market, he bartered for an Allen wrench and a hacksaw. Yaden unlocked maintenance panels to gain access to air ducts that led to the roof. He cut through ductwork, then the roof to get outside. A fourth man stayed behind to replace the panel. The escapees moved along the roof of the jail, then jumped over the wall. Once on the outside, the inmates said they split up. That was the last time he saw Yaden. Prison officials called FBI Special Agent John Shum to give him the bad news.
Once I heard Yaden escaped yet again from federal custody, my first reaction was I was very angry, because here was a guy that had a history of having escaped numerous times in the past. The people that were responsible for his custody knew his history, and they should have been more careful.
Investigators believed Yaden would likely head toward family and friends in DeKalb County, Alabama.
Have you seen Roger lately?
No, he's been
Agents
there
interviewed
like
anyone
5
Yaden might have contacted in the area, including an ex-girlfriend.
Have you talked to him on the phone? Letter?
No letters.
Like the others, she said she hadn't seen or heard from him. They left a card and told her to call if Yaden surfaced.
Think of anything, call him?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to tell you that.
After the agents left, she admitted to her current boyfriend that she had let Yaden hide in her house.
It was an accident.
He was upstairs in the attic.
I guess he's your guy, but he's gotten himself into a lot of trouble.
The boyfriend was upset and called police. Nearby officers responded. They didn't know if Yaden was armed and waiting for them. Five weeks after his escape from New Mexico, officers finally cornered Roger Yaden. Captured in DeKalb County, Alabama, Roger Yaden's crime spree ended where it began. His escape nullified the deal with federal prosecutors.
Check this area.
He was charged with the crimes he had committed during his last escape from Alabama. Alabama Assistant Attorney General David Estes prosecuted Yaden in Talladega.
The jury in this case deliberated for a very short period of time, an hour at the most, and they came back and they convicted Roger Dale Yaden of 3 counts of kidnapping in the first degree, 2 counts of robbery in the first degree, and 1 count of escape in the first degree.
Yaden received 5 concurrent life sentences without parole. Now in maximum lockdown, Roger Yaden will never leave Alabama prison alive.